Welcome to the Hope Effect. Hey guys, a little bit nervous with this. Welcome to the first episode. Bear with me, working through my nerves. I've never really talked on a platform. It's been at least 10 years since I've had an active yoga nutritional functioning website or live story feeds. But welcome to the Hope Effect. Thanks for joining along on this first episode. This podcast and YouTube channel was really created as a space to talk about healing in a deeper way, not just physically, but mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and energetically too. I think so many people today are walking around exhausted, overstimulated, emotionally disconnected, anxious, burnout, and honestly just stuck in a survival mode without even realizing how deeply stress has affected them. And over the last few years, I've become really passionate about understanding why that happens, why the body responds the way that it does, and what healing actually looks like beyond just pushing through. So, for the very first episode, I really just wanted to introduce myself a little bit more, talk about why this topic became so important to me personally, and start the conversation around stress and the nervous system, because I truly think so much of what people are experiencing physically and emotionally today connects back to chronic stress. All right, into my background. I come from a background in biomedical engineering. I went to NC State after moving away from my small hometown in West Tennessee. I've always been fascinated by the body and how interconnected everything really is. So in school, I focused more on human anatomy and how the body responds to pharmaceuticals and stress physiology rather than more of the prosthetic engineering side of that engineering degree. I was always interested in why the body responds the way that it does, why stress affects people differently, why anxiety becomes physical, why gut health and hormones and inflammation are all connected, and how the nervous system really controls so much more than people realize. And honestly, that curiosity naturally started leading me towards yoga, meditation, nervous system healing, mindfulness, and eventually spirituality as well. Because even with a scientific background, I still realized there was such a huge gap between understanding the body intellectually and actually understanding healing holistically. One thing that really deepened this journey for me personally was realizing how much chronic stress was affecting my own body physically. I work in a very high stress operational leadership environment, and over time, especially through certain periods of ongoing chaos, pressure, unhealthy environments, constant nervous system activation, my body eventually reached its breaking point. And honestly, it's turned into somewhat of a medical crisis. I've started developing autoimmune related symptoms that mimic Crohn's disease, all nothing is fully checked out diagnostically yet. And what became impossible for me to ignore this was this. My body was simply responding to chronic stress. And I think that experience has changed the way that I view healing forever. Because we're taught to separate mental stress from physical health, when in reality, the body keeps score of everything we continuously push past. So think of like a tally count. The nervous system affects inflammation, stress affects digestion, stress affects hormones, stress affects sleep, stress affects the immune system. I think so many people are physically carrying the weight of emotional overload and chronic stress without fully realizing how deeply the body absorbs it. I also have a personal diagnosis of general anxiety disorder, and one thing I learned about myself over time is that my anxiety is environmentally triggered, and that is after working years with a psychiatrist and finding the right fit. That means if I'm surrounded by chaos, high stress, toxic environments, constant emotional pressure for very long periods of time, my body eventually starts responding physically. And honestly, I've never experienced panic attacks until after having my first child. Before that, I really didn't understand how deeply stress could affect the nervous system firsthand. But during a very overwhelming and emotionally toxic chapter of my life, my body started breaking down from the constant stress I was carrying, and I started having panic attacks almost like clockwork. Literally 3 a.m., 6 a.m., No, 3 a.m., 9 a.m., 3 p.m., so on and so forth. It was very odd how it was the same timing every single day. And what became really interesting to me was realizing how physical anxiety actually is. Your nervous system doesn't always know the difference between emotional danger and physical danger. If your body constantly feels unsafe, it starts living in survival mode. That experience honestly changed the way I viewed healing completely. So back to eventually when I fought with PCP for about 1.5 years and kept a habit tracker journal to really document everything, going through gallon-sized Ziploc bag of different medications, trying to figure out what would help. And eventually I went to a psychiatrist who genuinely helped me more than I realized was possible. And it honestly surprised me because I originally thought I'd connect better with a woman psychiatrist, but I ended up with a male and he was absolutely incredible. It was the first person in my life that had ever looked at me and said, "Hope, it's okay to ask for help. You carry a lot on your shoulders, more than the average human, and it's okay to need help. You don't have to have it all put together." And what I appreciated was that he helped me understand that anxiety wasn't just in my head. We have a very, cliche trend with everybody's got anxiety. Anxiety is normal on a certain level. Anxiety is a normal feeling. It is good to feel anxiety. There's a difference in regular anxiety versus an anxiety disorder. But there were very real physiological responses happening in my body. The nervous system was responding exactly the way it was designed to respond under chronic stress. That experience made me start looking at healing differently, not just emotionally, but neurologically, hormonally, physically, and energetically too. One thing I became deeply interested in was how the nervous system responds to chronic stress, because biologically the body was designed to protect us from short-term danger. Fight or flight is actually an incredible survival mechanism. The problem is modern life keeps people there constantly. Constant notifications, constant stimulation, constant pressure, financial stress, emotional stress, social media, overworking, never slowing down mentally, always thinking about the next thing, and then eventually the nervous system adapts to chaos as its baseline. Honestly, I think a lot of people are walking around dysregulated without realizing that their baseline is at such a chaotic limit and your neck is pressed against the top of the roof. Signs of dysregulation don't always show up dramatically. Sometimes it's jaw tension, gut issues, brain fog, fatigue, inflammation, sleep problems, irritability, emotional numbness, constant overstimulation, feeling disconnected with yourself, or never fully being able to relax. I think many of us in today's time have gotten so used to surviving in stress that peace almost starts to feel unfamiliar, almost like you need permission to have a day to relax. One thing I've learned through meditation, mindfulness, spirituality, and nervous system work is how important self-awareness actually is, because healing really starts when you become aware of yourself. Aware of how your body responds to stress, aware of what environments dysregulate you, what people drain you, what habits make you feel inflamed or exhausted, what thoughts constantly keep your nervous system activated, what actually helps you feel safe, grounded, and regulated again. I think a lot of people move through life completely disconnected from themselves. They ignore exhaustion, we ignore stress, ignore emotional overwhelm, ignore our body's natural warning signs until eventually the body forces them to slow down. And I think spirituality, at least the way I view it, it's really about reconnecting with yourself again, not escaping reality, not pretending life is perfect, not toxic positivity, but learning how to actually listen to yourself. Learning when your body needs rest, when your nervous system needs stillness, when your diet needs to change, when your environment is unhealthy, when your energy feels depleted, when your thoughts are becoming destructive, or when your life is just no longer aligned with your peace. Honestly, I believe self-awareness changes everything because once you become aware of your patterns, you start gaining the ability to change them. This is where I started becoming really interested in the connection between science and spirituality, because the more I learned about the nervous system, the more I realized how deeply connected everything actually is. Your emotional state affects your nervous system then affects your hormones. Stress affects digestion. Stress affects inflammation. Your environment affects your energy. Everything is connected. When I talk about manifestation, I know some people immediately think it sounds unrealistic or silly. But honestly, I think manifestation is deeply connected to psychology, nervous system regulation, mindset, focus, belief systems, emotional energy, and the way we continuously shape our reality through repeated thoughts and behaviors. Because your nervous system affects your emotional state affects your thoughts affect your actions affect your habits, and your habits shape your reality. Everything is connected, and I really do believe human beings are incredibly powerful. Not in a magical, unrealistic way, but like in the sense that the mind, body, emotions, environment, stress levels, belief systems, and energy all constantly affect each other. One of my favorite topics to talk about is energy and manifestation. So in Hillary, when I talk about energy, I don't mean that in a detached or unrealistic way. I genuinely mean that we are energetic beings. Scientifically, we are atoms held together, making up this entire human experience. Sound affects the nervous system. Frequency affects the body. Music affects emotions. Environment affects regulation. Even things like sound baths, there's actual research showing how sound frequencies can help regulate the nervous system and shift the body into more relaxed states. I think the G blah, blah, blah. I can resurface a link. There's a really cool documentary about sound therapy. Basically, let's talk about with my job background in a nephrology clinic, which we're not going to do this to our patients. It would be kind of silly, but you could theoretically and scientifically measure the sound waves or frequency coming off of a damaged organ, such as a kidney. And theoretically, with sound healing and frequency, if a frequency is coming off of a damaged organ, or think of negative, that's a negative sound wave. If you want to heal, you would reverse that negative frequency and it becomes healing. It's very kind of confusing until you look at it. I've also DJ'd in my 20s and all of that. So when you talk about sound frequencies and reversing frequencies and negative versus positive, it can go all over the place and get a little confusing for people. But there is actual research showing how sound frequencies can help regulate the nervous system and shift the body into more relaxed states. Honestly, I think modern life has disconnected so many people from stillness, silence, rest, and regulation. We don't know what rest is or stillness is to really connect with ourselves. One thing that became really interesting to me personally was seeing the connection between the nervous system anatomically and what many spiritual traditions describe as chakras. So when I go through sound healing, manifestation, energy, chakras, that comes from my yoga background, and I come from a biomedical engineering background in school. So naturally, learning about chakras for the first time seemed kind of woohooey. So let's relate it to the human body. So obviously chakras are viewed more spiritually and energetically rather than through traditional Western medicine. But I think it's fascinating how closely some of those energy centers align with major nerve plexus and systems within the body. For example, the root chakra relates heavily to safety and survival, which connects closely to the nervous system's survival responses. The solar plexus chakra relates to confidence, identity, and personal power, and anatomically sits around major digestive and autonomic nervous system structures. The heart chakra connects to emotion, connection, and regulation. The throat chakra connects to expression and communication. And whether people view that spiritually, energetically, physiologically, or symbolically, I think it's really interesting how interconnected the body, emotions, mind, and nervous system actually are. That's kind of what led me deeper into yoga, mindfulness, meditation, nervous system work, and spirituality, not from a place of trying to escape reality, but from a place of trying to reconnect with myself again. Because I realized healing isn't always about becoming someone new. Sometimes it's about returning to who you were before chronic stress disconnected you from yourself. Honestly, part of why I'm starting this platform is because I need this space too. I'm still learning, still healing, still figuring out how to better regulate stress, protect my peace, and navigate life in a healthier way while balancing being a wife, a mom, a career-driven woman, and still trying to take care of myself somewhere in the middle of it all. One thing I've noticed kind of online, I don't really hop on social media too often and really go down those rabbit holes, but I'm 33. So mid-30s, I've noticed a lot of females that I went to school with, whether it be high school or college, where some of us are mothers, some of us are not. Some of us are married, some of us are not. All of our lives are different, but there's so many of us going through like a career crisis or trying to figure out what the next chapter in our life is going to be because we are so stressed out right now trying to carry it all. And we feel out of place and unaligned with what really matters in life. For instance, I feel kind of the lackluster in my wife and motherly duties because my job keeps me so busy. My health has gone through a severe medical crisis over the last 6 months due to the chronic stress, which is also wavered on my husband and my family. My oldest child is type 1 diabetic, which is autoimmune for people that don't know. That's something that cannot be controlled. So we have a lot going on in our household. So this space really is a platform for me to figure out how to better regulate and regulate my stress, protect my peace, and navigate life in a healthier way, figuring out how to balance along the way. You guys will get to hear me ramble. I go down rabbit holes sometimes. You might like it, you might not. If you've looked at my Facebook or anything of the brand I'm trying to create, there's several different niches and categories that I like to focus on, but they all center back around your body and your self-awareness and your nervous system and really connecting with yourself on a spiritual level, meditation practices, and manifestation. You can manifest whatever life you want. It is so incredibly powerful what words and what your mindset can do for yourself. What you put out into the world returns back to you. So if you view yourself negatively, if you view yourself stressed out and all you focus on is stress, that's what your life is going to become. If you take a moment to step back and really understand that stress may not be important and that fire is really not going to cause the whole house to burn down today, that can go to the top of my stack for tomorrow, and I'll continue to work my stack from the top down. It's not coming from a place of someone who has everything perfectly figured out. This is coming from a place of genuine curiosity, healing, self-awareness, and wanting to create conversations that help people feel less alone in what they're experiencing. And that's really where the hope effect came from. The idea that healing creates a ripple effect through every part of your life. Your body, your mind, your relationships, your peace, your energy, your purpose, your ability to actually feel present again. So if you've been feeling exhausted, overwhelmed, emotionally disconnected, stuck in survival mode, or you're just trying to reconnect with yourself again, you feel kind of out of place with what you're doing in life and just feel like some major shift is calling at you, I hope this space feels grounding for you. And I'm really excited for the conversations we're going to continue to have here. Some of them may be interesting to you, some of them may not. All of my YouTube will be posted onto the YouTube channel and shared on socials. And then I will have a website launching within the month that I think I'm more excited about than the YouTube channel itself. My content will also range from voice recordings to video recordings and also educational imagery as well to give you guys some visual effects on certain things. For clarity, I'm not a doctor. I have a biomedical engineering degree with the yoga instructor certification. I am interested in getting my integrative practitioner certification and license soon within the next year, and then past that, the health coach advisor. So there's room here for me to grow as well and possibly create a career path for myself. And it could overlap into the job I currently have. So that's one cool thing about life that I like. Everything's connected. What you put out into the world comes back to you tenfold. Life is really complicated in the world, and it's really fast in the way that the world has us living, especially in America. But life really is simple when you take a step back. Life is organic. We're here to be humans. We're here to connect. We're here to love. We're here to experience this earth while we have it. So I'm really excited for the conversations we're going to continue to have. Thanks for being here for the very first episode of The Hope Effect. And if this resonated with you any, I genuinely would love to hear what your body has been trying to tell you lately. Anybody?